I thought the president's speech was outstanding. I don't agree with every single policy proposal. In fact, I've never agreed with any president's every single policy proposal. But the speech was outstanding, which is why the media have gone nuts. Now, I haven't listened to any other talk show today. I've been extremely busy. I don't most of the time. I will not be here Thursday or Friday, and trust me, I'm not going on vacation. But I watched the State of the Union speech. I didn't waste my time with Stacey Abrams because I don't care about Stacey Abrams. She's not even an elected official right now, is she? So just because the Democrats and the media are promoting her and they put her on, what does that have to do with me? Nothing. But I did watch the president, as most of you did. It was an excellent speech. He moved in and out of history, moved in and out of economics, he moved in and out of the culture. He slammed socialism. He slammed abortion. And I have to be honest with you, I've never seen a president like this have to deal with so many miscreants and malcontents in the audience. They're all dressed in white, these women. I'm saying, what are they dressed in white for? We looked that up yesterday, remember? For women's, what was it again, Rich? I don't remember. Suffrage and something else. Economic equality, I think. I don't believe in economic equality. I believe in economic individualism. I believe in personal success. What is economic equality? What the hell is that? And these zillionaires who are Democrats, they don't practice economic equality. Kind of a stupid ass. The whole thing is dumb. Economic equality. You don't want economic equality either. So they're all dressed in white, to make a statement. It's embarrassing. Then they put the camera on Kamala Harris, and she's smirking away. And they put this Nancy Pelosi in the bed. The constant twits and tweets and doesn't know when to sit. She puts. Did you notice, by the way, how she controls her clock ass there? Did you notice that, Mr. Producer? They're getting it a little out of hand. She puts her hand up. They stop immediately. Wow. And Schumer just kind of slippery, sliding down in his seat there. And, of course, they have to show us AOC. And she's staring out of anger and hatred. The 29-year-old who knows how to run the whole world. She's staring. Oh, my God. President's going through the unemployment numbers, which are historic. For blacks, for Latinos, for the handicapped, for women. And they're sitting on their hands. Okay, you saw it. I saw it. And I also thought the discussion about World War II, about Normandy, about Holocaust, that have those men up there, unbelievable. And then, of course, as everybody else I'm sure has said today, because it was said late last night, look at all the jobs they created for women. So all the liberal Democrat women jump up. Now, he wasn't talking about you, you fools. He wasn't talking about you. But it's always about them. But the media. So you have these polls. 76% of the people polled immediately afterward by CBS said they liked the speech. Over 70, I think it was 72 or 76% by CNN said they liked it or liked it a lot. And I think you can reverse that and say 76% of the media hated it. Probably 90%. Todd, he's one of the biggest mouths out there complaining about it. But there was a time when Barack Milhouse Benito Obama was president of the United States, but luckily those days are over, when they couldn't praise his speeches enough. They couldn't praise it enough over at PBS, CBS, ABC, MSNBC. Like this. Cut one, Newsbusters, go.
And it reminded me, this is going to sound ridiculous, like I always think about George Washington, but it reminded me of George Washington's farewell address.
This was a speech that...
How could it remind you of George Washington's farewell address? It was in writing. He didn't give it verbally. And nothing Obama has ever done, said, written, reminds me of George Washington in any respect. Go ahead.
Sort of reminiscent of what Lincoln said in the Gettysburg Address.
Lincoln. It's reminiscent of Lincoln, reminiscent of Washington. Unbelievable. Go ahead.
Speech was equivalent to Ronald Reagan's Morning in America speech.
So we have Washington, Lincoln, Reagan. And, folks, to me, that's the order of the greatest presidents right there. Washington, Lincoln, Reagan. An Obama speech. Go ahead.
Positive outlook on the world.
And in many ways, you felt this speech tonight was almost downright Reagan-esque.
Full of sunny optimism, very Reagan-esque.
If presidential leadership...
By the way, they hated Reagan. You remember that, most of you, right? Now it's Reagan-esque. He's Reagan-esque because Reagan was such a tremendously successful and popular president. It's Reagan-esque. Obama is like the exact opposite of Reagan. It's called an antonym. When you look up Reagan, you write that antonym, there's Obama. Go ahead.
We're only about giving speeches. The jackhammers would already be at work on Mount Rushmore.
Who's that? That's Howard Feynman? No wonder he's been dismissed to MSNBC. Go ahead.
In many ways, this is one of the most conservative speeches that a Democratic president has given since...
Well, then you're supposed to hate it, right? Just listening to these slobbering buffoons in the media over Obama. Oh, we'll get to how they react to Trump in a minute. You've heard it probably all day. Although most of you work, maybe you haven't heard of it. Go ahead.
The middle of Bill Clinton's time.
You know, I was trying to think about who he was tonight, and it's interesting. He is post-racial by all appearances. I forgot he was black tonight for an hour.
What kind of stupid comments are these? But I've never forgotten, Chris, that you're stupid. Now, Chuck Todd is not just the host of Meet the Press. Chuck Todd is the chief political reporter for NBC, the mothership. And Chuck Todd, when he was in college, he went out of his way to work for the campaign of a presidential candidate, Tom Harkin, one of the most radical of the bunch. His wife is a big Democrat consultant and activist. So he can't fool us. We've already talked about the Chuck. And his view on climate change. Can't have any climate deniers here, says the genius. But here he is. Cut 2, go.
Millions of people are going to watch tonight's State of the Union, which is shaping up to be a night of absurdist theater. Absurd because the White House says the president's address is going to be about bipartisanship, unity, compromise. They say it's going to be a night of
this is a pre-speech comment. Go ahead.
With a T. They really use that word. Absurd because literally, as the White House is telling reporters about how the president is going to rise above partisanship tonight, the president is tweeting about a human wall.
Boy, he can hit that high note, can he? Go ahead.
Chuck Schumer. And, of course, Festivus begins and he airs grievances about the midterms. Absurd because tonight's address was
Hey, Chuck, let me ask you a question. Why do you pretend to be a journalist? Why? Well, everybody knows you're fully out of the closet. You've fully exposed yourself. Why do you pretend to be a journalist? You're hurting freedom of the press. If you hate somebody so much, you shouldn't be reporting on them. That goes for all these clowns. Just listen. He's tweeting about a human wall. He's tweeting about putting the military out there to stop illegal aliens from coming into the country. Your children don't go to school with illegal aliens. You don't live on the border. You've chosen a different kind of life in the bubble in Washington, D.C. But all Americans can't live that way. Go ahead.
Because of an act of overt partisanship when the president himself decided to engineer a 35-day government shutdown.
Now just listen to this propaganda. You sure you don't work for Russian TV, pal? Pravda? Because that's exactly what you sound like. The media today, ladies and gentlemen, do not hold the government to account. They are mouthpieces for the government. Now, what I mean by that is not necessarily people in the government like Trump and other Republicans and so forth. They are mouthpieces for big government. They are mouthpieces for the bureaucracy. They are mouthpieces for government employees. They are mouthpieces for entitlement programs. They are mouthpieces for pretty much what the Democrat agenda is. Really, really a lousy time in terms of the press. And they go through various cycles they have over our history. This is going to be viewed as just one of the lousiest times. Then we have Van Jones, a communist. And I remember some of the conservative senators and others who did their prison reform bill together said, I have Van Jones, and Van Jones and I are actually texting each other. Well, so what? That's bizarre. That's weird. Very weird. And even when the president talked about so-called prison reform, and he wants to spend $1.5 trillion on infrastructure, which is the Democrat wet dream, and then he slipped in this line about family leave, and a friend of mine who is a huge Trump supporter who owns a restaurant, he said, who's paying for that? I said, you are. I can't afford that. So he threw out some very Nixonian types of proposals. Democrat, liberal proposals, 3 of them. Still a great speech. I happen to disagree with those proposals. And then Van Jones comes up with a contrived line, a line that you know they wrote down or he wrote down before he even went on the air. And here he is. Cut 3, go.
I saw this as a psychotically incoherent speech with cookies and dog poop.
See, there you go. That was all cleverly constructed in advance. A psychotically incoherent speech. You would know, pal, with your psychotically incoherent ideology. Go ahead.
Tries to put together in the same speech these warm, kind things about humanitarianism and caring about children. At the same time, he is demonizing people who are immigrants.
How is he demonizing people who are immigrants? He even said and threw in a line there about he wants immigration more than ever before, something to that effect, but it must be legal. How is that demonizing immigrants? While this guy demonizes Caucasians all the time and demonizes conservatives all the time and demonizes Republicans all the time and demonizes all kinds of people, because that's what the left does. So now, if you want border security and you support more legal immigration than ever before in our history, you're demonizing immigrants. You know what, Van Jones? Let me tell you something. You and your left wing can all go to hell. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.